think we're going to get started. Thank you all for being here this afternoon, for sticking out the conference all the way to the last session. You're waiting for your dessert and your prizes after this. To give you a little bit of background on this session, as our kind of summary indicated, we all learn a lot about the content of our respective disciplines when we're in graduate school. But it occurred to me when I was about to teach my first class in my 5th year of graduate school that nobody had taught me anything about teaching, about how to actually communicate that information to other people. So most of us end up, asking people a year or two old, ahead of us in the program, or trying to distill information that our favorite professors seem to use the techniques that we could tell. So that kind of is what led us to decide to propose this particular workshop. Until recently, there was a program at AU called Partners in Teaching, where more junior teachers were matched with more seasoned ones for a year of mentoring. And all three of us were part of that program. And being part of that program caused us to really reflect on our own personal pedagogies. And that reflection is what truly led to this particular session. So my name is Laura Lawson Duval. I am in the psychology department, and I have taught psychology for 25 years now. I am joined by Jody Gann, who had a successful career as a public health educator before she transitioned into academia about 7 years ago. And Erica Hart, who has been teaching for 5 years since getting her PhD. She's also a graduate of the Greenberg Seminar Program here at AU. Whitney Mahoon-Mock, who is on the schedule as one of our co-presenters, was going to provide the freshest perspective because she taught her very first class in the fall of 2019. She is a 5th year clinical psych PhD program in the psychology department, and it is internship interview season, and she had an interview today, so could not join us. But she shared some of the things that she wanted to bring to this session, and Erica will actually be presenting quite a few of those. So when we first got together to talk about the contents of this session, we all had different ideas of what we thought we'd like to share. We had a brainstorming session and then tried to distill all of our various ideas into 4 major categories. And then we got clever with our little acronym and decided to use and Farron. And so we have an A, N, N, and F major categories that we want to share with you. I am going to start by talking about kind of the broadest topic, the overall approach to teaching. Central concepts that you might want to think about when planning to teach for the first time or to teach a new course. If I can stop for a second, actually, I wanted to do this earlier and I forgot. How many of you have taught 2, 1, or 0 courses? So have taught, 2 classes or fewer? Okay, so that's maybe 3/4, almost 80%. Terrific. That's really some of the individuals we were targeting. And those of you who are more seasoned faculty, we hope a little bit later you'll be able to share some of your best practices as well. So again, I'm going to do the overall approach, and then Erica is going to take the ends. She's going to talk about some of the more specific course policies and procedures you might want to think about, some of the real nuts and bolts in navigating classroom dynamics, some of the issues that come up, when you're actually teaching and planning a course. And then finally, Jody's going to finish up with this idea of flourishing. How can we create balance? How can we flourish as teachers while simultaneously maintaining some self-preservation as well? Okay. And we want to leave plenty of time for you to provide some examples of your own best practices or to ask questions. The index cards that we gave you, our idea is that on one side, you could jot down questions, and on the other side, any kind of actionable ideas, something that when you hear a point that one of us makes, you're like, I could do that, and think about how you might want to incorporate that into a class you're about to teach, or that you can imagine yourself teaching at some point in the future. So overall approach, I have 5 different kind of categories that I wanted to talk about in overall approach, starting with the idea of student variability and unique student qualities. It might seem obvious, but I remember being so surprised my first class that everybody I was teaching wasn't the type of student I was. You know, those of us who end up in academics and teaching tend to be people who were pretty serious about their studies, pretty respectful of their faculty members, very interested in getting the most they could out of the class. So that's kind of what I expected all college students to be like. So in one of my very first classes, I had a student who came to my office after the first exam and essentially challenged me to justify why every single question that he got wrong was wrong. And he wanted me to basically, you know, he was very clear that the norm was he was right, and I better provide a really good reason for him for why, you know, I took off, you know, told him that that particular answer was incorrect. I would never have done that. And it really took me by surprise. And it took me a minute to realize that I needed to kind of shift the tables and ask him to explain, why do you think that is a better answer than the one that I told you is correct on this particular multiple choice question, for example? On the flip side, I've had students so incredibly respectful and demure that they hesitate to come talk to me about an error that I clearly made. And they don't even want to approach me and suggest that I added their points incorrectly or something very obvious. So, you know, just a huge, you know, breadth of types of students and just being aware of that, okay? Certainly preparation for college. Some of our students come to class able to effectively take notes from a verbal lecture, assimilate information from reading, study for exams, you know, write papers. Others don't have those skills yet. Now, we may not be trained to be editors or to be individuals, you know, who teach study skills, but we have those resources available at AU, and we are the direct contact with the students. So it is our job to make sure that we're picking up on some of those lapses that our students might have and helping them find the areas where they can get those skills. Okay, so, you know, being aware of the fact that everybody's not coming in at the same level. The academic goals differ. Back to my idea of everybody not necessarily being, you know, the same type of student. Getting an A might not be the goal for every student. Okay, some students might care more about theory, others about practical application. And it's okay for students to come in and have different goals. And we have to be careful not to assume that everybody does have the same goal. Okay. Now, in addition to these factors, clearly, CTRL has had entire sessions, indeed at this conference has sessions about other specific factors that have to do with variability of students, like teaching international students, first generation students, students of color. And those are obviously very important factors to consider that I won't go into detail here. But from planning your syllabus to preparing lectures to determining assignments, you know, keep in mind that you have lots of different types of students in your classroom. Onto this idea of approachability. Okay. It took me a while, and I've become increasingly aware over my teaching career. I generally don't consider myself the world's most intimidating person. You know, I kind of get up and I joke around with my students and I tell stories about my kids, and I think I'm pretty friendly and approachable. But apparently, we're pretty scary to some students, and they really don't want to come see us. Even those of you who might be graduate students, fairly young, once you're in that position of power, authority, the one standing up here, talking to the students, you become scary. And they are very hesitant. Not everybody, but a lot of students are hesitant. So I encourage you to make it easy to come see you. Try and reduce the barriers for a student coming to your office. I know some faculty members, which might be easier in smaller classes, that require individual meetings. You have to come by my office and say hello and tell me your hometown. You know, so as extra credit or the first homework assignment, that also reduces the barrier because they now know where your office is. They know how to find it. I teach in Asbury. Believe me, that's an issue. People don't know how to find Asbury. And so if you reduce that barrier and they've come to your office the first time, they know what it looks like. They know that you were friendly when you talked to them. That allows that barrier to come down. I engage in bribery. I always have a big thing of Hershey Kisses in my office. I tell them they can stop by anytime and get Hershey Kisses. They don't even have to talk to me if they don't want to. Usually they do at least say hello when they come in. And I think one of the important factors of this is Let them know that you're going to take responsibility for carrying on the conversation if they come by. Encourage them to come by. So many students have told me that, yeah, I really wanted to go see this professor, so I keep trying to come up with a really good question to ask so that I can go to their office hours. And I say, you can go to office hours without a really good question. You can go to office hours with just a very simple question or with no question at all. Just say, I wanted to get to know you outside of the classroom and introduce myself. That is perfectly acceptable, but they don't necessarily realize that. So encouraging them to come and say, you know what? If you come, I'll make the conversation. Usually after the first exam, I tell my students, if you didn't study enough and realize you didn't study enough and didn't do well, fine. Go study more next time and do better. But if you really feel like you studied hard, thought you were going to do really well, and your grade doesn't reflect what you thought, please come see me. I've been doing this for a long time. I can look at your notes. I can talk to you about your study habits. I can help you. You do not have to know why you're coming to see me other than to say, I really thought I was going to do better on this test and I didn't. And I will take it from there. So make it easy for your students to come see you, because we know we can help them when they come see us, but they don't always want to come see us. All right, on to empathy and humility. All right. These will be quick. They're somewhat self-explanatory. Seems basic, but let your students know that we understand their plight. It can be validating to them that they recognize that we know that our class isn't their only one, that they have 5 other classes, plus a job, plus an internship, or 12 internships as an AU student. I'll tell them around midterms things like, you know, I'm worried about you guys. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you exercising? Be kind to one another. This is a really rough time for all of you guys. Be aware of that. Be kind to one another. If I have the flexibility to maybe change a due date or give them a choice on an assignment, I will often do that, because it makes them feel like we recognize that they're having a tough time. Just knowing that we recognize they have a lot of stress can be very reassuring to students. So providing some empathy there. I've been there, I know what it's like, and I know that this is a really tough time for you guys right now. Kind of along those same lines of demonstrating our humanity, I would encourage you to engage in a part of humility as well. Be comfortable to admit your own mistakes. We were actually joking when we were preparing this talk that most of what we're talking about to you guys today are the result of our own mistakes. We screwed things up and then we learned from them, and we now can share that information with you. Okay? Admit it if you don't know an answer. You know, that was my biggest fear teaching my first class, that somebody was going to ask a question that I didn't know the answer to. Okay? First of all, you'll recognize by the time you're teaching, you really do know a lot of the answers, and so that's very reaffirming, for yourself. But yeah, you're going to get a question you don't know the answer to. It's okay to admit, that's a great question and I'm not sure. But then jot it down, look it up, come back the next class and say, Sarah asked a great question and I wasn't sure, but I did some research and this is what I found out about that. That's also very validating to the student, that you thought their question was valuable enough that you took time to look up the information. So it's okay to admit that you don't know everything. Also okay to admit that you screwed up. If an assignment just didn't go that well, or a test question was just badly written, admit it. Say, yeah, well, that one didn't work out so well, did it? And I gave everybody 2 points to make up for the fact that that question didn't work. Or, you know what, this is what I was hoping was going to happen with this assignment, and it didn't seem like you guys were getting that and that it was working in that way. Let's talk about it. How would you guys reassess? If I were to use this next class, next time I teach this, what would you guys, tweak? What would you change in it? Again, valuing them as students who can certainly provide helpful feedback to you when preparing a class. Mid-semester evaluations is a way to seek out that information more formally. To say, what do you like about what's going on in this class? What would you, change? And give them the opportunity to give you that feedback. And then, if at all possible, enact at least one change based on that. Okay? Which brings me to the final point I want to talk about. If I were to summarize my entire teaching philosophy in one word, it would probably be this one: transparency. Am I doing okay? Okay. Transparency. Students might not always like the readings you choose, your assignments, your policies, but if they understand that you're not randomly trying to cause them misery, I find that they're remarkably accepting, okay? Most of us spend a tremendous amount of time deciding what topics to cover, in what order, what assignments to give, what readings to do. Our students don't all know that. They don't realize how much time we put into just creating a syllabus, okay? Of course, assuming that you have spent a lot of time thinking about your assignments and your readings and how you're presenting stuff, share that information with your class, okay? Help walk them through your logic, okay? Help bring them on board for why it is that you are setting things up a certain way. Explain the process that you want them to become familiar with, or the skill that you want them to learn through a particular assignment. For example, I make my graduate students submit comments on the readings to me before class. They hate it in general, and they are comfortable telling me about that in mid-semester evaluations. And in the mid-semester evaluation, I always do kind of a feedback session after the mid-semester evaluation. I try to change things, but when I can't change it, I try to be transparent about why. I say, I get that, and I also try and be a little empathetic. I get that it's a pain in the neck to do these, and I understand that you're putting a lot of time into writing these comments, but let me tell you why I do it. I find that our discussions are so much more robust if you've thought about it beforehand. It's not about me not trusting you. It's not that I don't think you're going to do the readings, but if you provide me with comments, I know the questions you have, I know the thoughts you're thinking about. It helps me construct the discussion for the class. I also use it to draw out some more naturally introverted, quieter members of the class. And I can say, Joe, you made a great point about such and such. Can you share that with the class? Now, if Joe's generally a little quieter and doesn't want to talk, he already knows that I think it's a good point. He's already written it down and has his comments in front of him to look at. So it makes it easier for him to, join into the class discussion. And it allows me, the opportunity to gather the comments in an organized fashion. I have that discussion with my students. They still don't like writing the comments, but I find them much more accepting of it. They understand that I have very careful thought process for why I have them do it, and I really find that they buy into it a lot more. Okay? That works for policies, readings, etc. Help them know why it is that you are doing what you're doing. And they may not love it, but I find that they are generally much more accepting if they know that you've put thought into it and it's not just random, like, I'd like you to read these 3,000 pages because I think it would just be fun to know that I'm making you read 3,000 pages. Okay. So transparency, something that I am, a big believer in, okay? I sometimes share evaluations from previous courses too and say, you know what, I know taking these quizzes is a pain in the neck, but every semester my students tell me, yeah, I hated taking those quizzes, but it so kept me up to speed and it helped me realize when I wasn't understanding something, so you should really keep them in. And so I say, so you can blame the people who took it with me last semester for why I'm still doing this. Okay. I'm going to end there and turn it over to Erica, who's going to get into some of the nuts and bolts type stuff. As we're transitioning, if you might want to take out your index card and think, do you have any questions for me on my stuff? Or is there anything that I said that make you think, ooh, I think I want to do that? And at the end of when the three of us are done presenting, we will have an opportunity for questions and for sharing.
Okay, so as Laura mentioned, I did the Greenberg seminar. Anyone else in the Greenberg? Great seminar. It was really helpful for honing my skills in teaching. I was also privileged enough to be thrown into a TA assignment my first semester as a grad student where I was teaching a lab, which was a bit of a shock to me, but it was a great experience in sort of gaining the confidence and getting the skills that I needed moving forward. As a grad student, I taught as an adjunct here at Montgomery College, Community College out in Silver Spring. And then before I became a term faculty, I also taught as an adjunct here. So a lot of teaching experience. Talk to your chairs to see if there's any opportunities to teach in your grad program. Let's see what else. All right, so nuts and bolts. I started with gather information. So let's say it's your first time teaching. Maybe you are teaching a course that you had as an undergrad 10 years ago. Grabbing those notes, if you can find them, looking at syllabi from other institutions, finding a mentor or colleagues that you could talk to who've taught the course that you're teaching, who've taught it before, who might have some materials that they can give you the first time around. Just getting as much information as you can that first time. A new course prep is a lot of work, particularly if you're new to teaching. You know, just estimating how much time it's going to take you to do all of the readings, all the background information. You know, one slide that I'm presenting might have, 4 references that I need to just understand and know by heart so I can bring it up and answer any questions. It's a heavy lift. So finding ways to use information from other people. Talk to your colleagues about policies as well. You know, we were just talking about yesterday about laptop policies. You'll find a lot of variation in that. I have policies around study guides. I don't give them. And talking what Laura said about transparency, I'm really clear with my students about why I don't give study guides. But talk to your colleagues about what they do, because there's a lot of great information, a wealth of information in other people's teaching. When prepping a new class, like I mentioned, getting syllabi from other universities, from your own university, figuring out what kinds of readings other people use, what sort of assignments are out there, what do you like as an assignment, what will spark the interest of your students. This is a tip from Tony Ahrens, get several textbooks, teach from one and read the other. Well, you want to read both, but have extra examples from other textbooks. One thing that I didn't realize is you can order textbooks for free. Once you're teaching a class, you get as many textbooks as you can, just so you have a lot of opportunities to figure out which is the best textbook for my students, what I think they're going to like the best, what's the clearest. And publishers will send you those for free. Additionally, when you adopt a textbook, you get access a lot of times. At least in our discipline, there's a lot of textbooks out there. A lot of times they'll have resources. So PowerPoint's already made, text banks, so you can gather videos, all sorts of information. And I like, when I'm starting out a new course that I've never prepped before, to get access to that information and then make it my own, personalize it, add my own examples, take out stuff that I think is pretty bland, add interesting images or whatever that's going to sort of trigger a story I want to tell to my students. And I think, when I first started, I thought I was a little ashamed of that, like, ooh, but the test bank is there and they've got great questions. It's a heavy lift to do a new course prep. Give yourself a humility piece of this, like, I only have the bandwidth to do so much. If I need to rely on a test bank, that's okay. And for the piece of personalizing it, I just want to say, know yourself, know your own personality, and put your fingerprint on your course. You're not a teaching robot here. You want to infuse who you are and your stories and your way of seeing the world into the content. We want your own voice there. And I think that the students really react positively to that. They feel it's authentic, and I think they feel more engaged when I add my own stories. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I see clients in a small therapy private practice, and so in abnormal psychology, for instance, bringing in case studies, a little bit sort of fictionalized so that we protect confidentiality, but I think students really appreciate my personal take on that subject, for instance. Scheduling. I think this is really important to consider as you're developing the syllabus and thinking about your whole semester, is to think about the sort of pacing of the readings that you're going to have, when the test is going to occur, your own schedule. Are you going to have office hours right after class or right before class? I think it's more convenient for students, particularly commuter students, if you have it adjacent to your class, so they're already on campus, for instance. Or you'd have virtual office hours, that kind of thing. I remember talking to a neighbor of mine, and I teach 2 courses. Other term faculty teach 3 courses. I have some administrative duties. But her was, oh, well, you only teach 2 classes. You must have a lot of free time. No, we don't. It's not a 9 to 5 teaching, but you will work more than 40 hours a week. And so thinking about when do you want to carve out time that's your block for preparing class, for reading new journal articles to fold into your content. Really thinking through the timing of that, and then also for your own sake and your own life, if you have papers due in your class, thinking about when you're going to grade those. Making sure if you have 2 or 3 classes that all the papers for all 3 courses are not due in the same week. Otherwise, you will not get through the grading of that in a timely fashion. So just thinking about that, making your life a little easier by staggering the grading on that. And knowing your limits, scheduling maybe some self-care time, some time to really collect your thoughts before class, for instance. Doing any last-minute preparation. You don't want to be too frazzled as you come into class, so really giving yourself some time before that. Another piece of the course schedule when you're laying it out, I like to have something small and gradable the first few weeks. So I can assess where my students are they understanding the material? Do I need to adjust a little bit? It also helps with early warnings. So if I have a student who's really not getting it, in the first few weeks, I can talk to him or her, and I can also have some gradable items so that if I need to do an early warning, I can do that. Prep enough, but not too much. Again, you want to have the background information so that you can confidently go in and answer any questions that might come up. But you also want to be loose enough that it feels sort of reasonable and not mechanical, that you can adapt if the conversation goes in a little bit different direction. And like Laura said, if a question comes up and you don't know the answer to, which is going to happen, you can sort of jot it down and then fill in the next class. You also want to have in your back pocket, again, not preparing so much that you have too much content to fit into that hour and 15 minutes. But enough where it's engaging, you're getting a lot of information there, but also some room in case you need to expand or contract the content. I like to have a couple of great ideas or questions that throw out to my class in my back pocket. If it feels like the energy is really stagnant, let's do a little conversation or discussion, pair share kind of activity. So having a few things in your back pocket can be really useful. And I mentioned consider the pacing of the semester. Okay, I don't know what's going on. There's question marks there. Setting up. It's the bullets, okay. So, like Laura was saying, know your teaching philosophy. Get a sense generally of what you want to accomplish this semester in this course. And I think that having an idea about classroom culture can be useful. I think about this almost as a mission statement of the class. What are the take-home messages? They're not going to remember every single detail that you presented, but what's the take-home message that you want from them to have when they finish the semester? That's a little bit of humility. They're not going to remember everything that you said, but maybe a little bit a nugget of wisdom to take with them. So creating a classroom culture where you can deliver that. They can be engaged and understand what you want them to take home with them. Know your policies, like was mentioned before. Explain them to your students. Give enough time when you start the class during the discussion of the syllabus to really answer any questions. Explain your justification about policies. And explain your culture as well. If you want a class that they can take academic risks, I always want that, where they can not know something and where they can struggle but eventually come out a little bit wiser, a little bit more of a critical thinker or curious. Describe that. Tell them that in one way or another. It can be sort of implied in the syllabus. It can be implied in the way that you teach, but somehow convey what you want in the course and in the culture. Explain what the expectations are for at-home work. How many hours of reading is this class? so that they can sort of judge how to juggle their semester, and that, oh gosh, Professor Hart really wants us to do the reading in here, so I'm have to allocate some time for that. Grading policies, again, if you're going to give a study guide or not give a study guide, explain why. If you have extra credit, give them a heads up about that. And then what I call class engagement, I don't like participation, explain what your expectations are. I have a rubric for class engagement, and I want them to know what an engaged student looks like, so what I expect from them. This is definitely one of those lessons learned through making a mistake. It's easier to start out firm with the rules and a little bit more rigid, and then loosen up as the semester progresses. I did not know that the first time I taught, and I was kind of carefree and a little looser. Oh, you can turn it in a little late, and they walked all over me. You really need to start out firm and then become a little bit more, I don't know, like forgiving, I guess. Also, minor point, if you start out with an easy exam, your second exam, don't make that a really hard one, they'll resent you. They'll say, oh, yeah, I thought I didn't have to prepare as much. Another lesson learned. Okay, navigating classroom dynamics, pivoting. Sometimes you'll start out with a class that you think is going great, and then something weird happens and you might have to shift. Every class is gonna be different. You might teach the same class, different sections, and it's a completely different vibe, a different personality in there. So understanding that and learning how to adapt is really important. Get to know your students. I have like moles planted in my classroom. How are things going? And I have those students who like to come to office hours, and they can tell me, nobody's doing the reading, or we're really stuck on those essays. Can you help us with that? Whatever. I don't actually, legit, not real moles, but you know. Consider a student survey at the beginning of the class to assess knowledge. Where do you fall in terms of your confidence in reading scholarly journal articles? Now I can know that majority of my class isn't confident, they haven't done this before, so I need to think about scaffolding in that case. Mid-semester evaluations, again, that can be really helpful to understand where they are. You can also do exit cards or in-the-moment feedback. I do these little cards where some of them are kind of fun, like, if you were live tweeting this class, what would the hashtag be? Just to get a sense of where they are. What questions do you have? What research study would you want to do after understanding this theory that I just presented? But also, what questions what things are you still confused about? That gives me a little feedback in the moment, that then I can go to the next class. And a lot of people weren't understanding this concept. Let me talk through it a little bit more. Self-compassion about, again, pivoting. If it didn't go well, this great demo that I had and no one got it, a little self-compassion. Not every class is gonna love what you do or love you, but that's okay. You know, it'll be another class that you have, and they might appreciate you a little bit more, or the demos that you do. Some common classroom dynamic issues, and we can go into more detail. I know we don't have a lot of time for this. We're good? If you have questions about these, we can go into a little bit more detail, but I'll give the kind of general lay of the land. Students not doing their reading, definitely find out why they're not doing the reading. Is it something where they don't understand the reading? It's too dense. You need to do a little scaffolding. Is it something where, oh, I didn't give them the idea that this is a graded portion, or that this really matters, it's going to be on the exam? Maybe explaining, justifying. Hopefully you're doing that at the beginning of the semester so that they are doing the reading. And then thinking about maybe creative ways of getting them to recognize that the reading is important. Maybe it's a discussion. Maybe it's a little 2-minute reflection at the beginning of the class. Show them that it's important to do the reading. Poor attitudes around grading, workload, challenging assignments. Again, hopefully you're creating a classroom culture where you're not having too much of a backlash. But if it's a one-off kind of person, maybe you can talk to them in the office hours. Let's see what else. Maybe they need some more justification about some of the challenging material. Why are you giving us this challenging material? Explaining what you hope to offer them through that. Difficult discussions. Maybe it's a conversation that just went in a weird direction. If it's one person who's driving that, again, talking to them in office hours, hopefully preparing them, revisiting a discussion that didn't go very well. The next class, hey, I wasn't sure how things were going. that discussion that we had, talking through that the next class. Creating some framework or rules or etiquette about how to have those difficult conversations can also be useful. Seeking anonymous feedback about what they liked, what they didn't like, how you can improve can help that. Lack of participation, from my observations, it has a lot to do with student anxiety about being wrong. Again, trying to create a classroom culture where it's okay to be wrong. Again, you can be the model of that by saying, I don't know the answer to that question, but I will go find out. And that kind of shows them that it's okay to not know the answer. And I try to reinforce it when I have a student who brings up a question and I know it was probably tough to ask that question. I really praise them for it. Thank you so much for asking that question. I really appreciate that. I know you're not the only person in this classroom who had that question. Good. Students not understanding the material, again, more scaffolding could be useful. Dominant participator, I like to talk to those people one-on-one and let them know that I really appreciate their engagement and how interested they are, but they might want to take a step back because other people don't have the opportunity to talk in class. And CTRL, I will say, can be a fantastic resource for a lot of these topics, taking a little deeper dive into what to do to manage this kind of classroom. Okay, thank you.
All right, so now you can take an opportunity to jot on your note card again any questions or actionable items based on Erica's comments. And Jody's going to tell you how to keep sane through all this.
Okay, and also I know this is kind of like, for many of us, our first day back in the real world after a nice break. So if you need just to take a stretch or shake out a little bit, because I know at least I haven't been sitting that long over the break. But yeah, thanks. Write your cards. We're going to have a question and answer session after my short portion. And then we have that other side, the things that you're going to try. It's kind of in keeping with New Year's resolutions and the start of a semester. So as Laura said, my background is in the field of public health as a public health practitioner, health educator, and I've been here 7 years, and I had the great fortune to get paired with Laura. I was the junior person, and Laura has been a great mentor, and then getting to know Erica through this process, I feel like these are really great tips that I learned over a whole semester to working with Laura, and like the transparency thing, I can't say enough. So I just want to give a shout out for how important that tip has been to my practice. And I've also just learned so much from CTRL. I feel like AU does a really good job. If you want to take advantage of the support that they offer, it was very helpful for me just coming in, not having taught at the university level before, to get the support that I needed. So now I'm a full-time faculty member, but I do want to remind you that I teach public health and health promotion. So this is going to be kind of the wellness portion of our talk today, and really in keeping with the Ann Farron Conference theme of thriving. The first thing that I thought of, well, thriving, that means self-care and self-preservation and things like that, but I kind of look at things that way. So my portion is on flourishing academically, I'm going to talk about first, and then self-preservation, and I'm going to just give you some tips of the amazing resources here at AU, so you don't have to do it all yourself, and you can get a lot of help to kind of preserve yourself, especially when you're a new teacher. It is really overwhelming until you have all your lectures and things like that you can kind of fall back on. Your next semester teaching, I think that first semester is a really tough one. And we want you to stay well, because that's really important. You have to stay well so your students can do well. And I commend you for being here. I know we're up against a student wellness. One of the other talks at this time was on student wellness, which is really my passion, but I think I'm glad that you made this choice, because I think it's really important for you to come in here and just get some reminders about taking really good care of yourselves. Okay, so let's talk about flourishing academically first. And it's funny, I'm starting talking about summer, and we haven't even gotten in on the new semester. But for many of us, this is a 10-month teaching position, which means that you have summers off to work, to do research, to travel. And I think to flourish academically, if you do have the luxury of doing some work or some research that can help benefit your teaching in the fall, just keeps it really fresh. And I just feel so grateful for this type of job where I do have the summers. I've done, consulting work, getting boosting enrollment in the Affordable Care Act. It's really great to talk about that. I've gone to Honduras with a volunteer medical brigade for the last 5 summers and really building some work in teen pregnancy, which is my passion. And it doesn't have to be going far away. There's also some really nice opportunities at the university over the summer, especially the beginning part of the summer. CTRL has courses on research methods and stat stuff that I've taken advantage of too. And it is funny that I went right to summer. I'm in the College of Arts and Sciences, and the Mellon Grant competition, you shouldn't call it a competition, that sounds very hardcore, is incredible. I have gotten about 3 Mellon Grants, and not for big amounts of money, and the application isn't that hard, but that's paid for a lot of the things that I've wanted to do over the summer. It's also enabled me to stay active in professional associations. I really never wanted to spend the money to be a member of the American Public Health Association, but using either the money that we got in the College of Arts and Sciences for professional development or applying for Mellon grants can really help you do the things that you want to do, which really benefits our teaching. It makes us feel whole, and I think makes us more exciting and dynamic teachers. And those professional development funds that we either get, on an annual basis or apply for can be used in a wide variety of ways. I actually use funding to become a wellness coach on site. I've taken Spanish classes off campus. Now I'm taking them on campus with my tuition remission. So flourishing academically, and Erica talked about this a little bit, but is blocking time in your schedule for staying current, for writing, for researching, for learning, for taking the time to read those journals that you get when you use your professional development funds to join an organization. From time to time, I've seen it advertised writing groups here on campus, where you just block out, like for an hour a week, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna do a little bit of my own research, I'm gonna do some writing, whether it's a blog or an article or things like that. I think that's like part of what we do here, but you have to block it in your schedule or that time just gets eroded, because as Erica said, whether you teach 1 class, 2 classes, or 3 classes, you make that, that can be your week very easily. And blocking time in your schedule to stay current. For different fields, there's a daily news digest that I like in my field, and I can see what the newest developments are. It takes me like 10 minutes to read it each day, and then I can know what I want to update my lectures with and things like that. And I'm one of those people, I'm a little bit anal about it, and it takes some work, but I try and update my lectures as I'm finding new material, and I don't make the perfect slide or anything like that, but I'm like, when I talk about the social determinants of health, I would love to talk about this study, how minimum wage is decreasing the infant mortality, and increasing minimum wage is decreasing the infant mortality rate, or something like that, and just making myself notes on my PowerPoints and things like that. I also keep a future syllabus for each course I teach. So when something didn't work, I want to remember that so I don't do it again. But also if I'm like, my colleague found this wonderful TED Talk, I want to make sure that I use this TED Talk next time. And I just put that right there, and it really makes, when the new semester comes around, I'm sure we're kind of all in this place, like last week, what am I going to teach this semester? How am I going to structure my class? I have good notes, and I don't have to worry that maybe I forgot something, and I can sort of like dig right into it. I also do that for the FARS report, which is coming up, and this is advice that I got from Laura, that I just have a Word document that says FARS. Does everybody know what I'm talking about when I talk about the FARS? Who knows what it stands for?
Faculty,
Research, report, surveillance stuff. Anyway, it's kind of like an annual report that you have to write, where, every conference you went to, if you had any publications, if you guest lectured. I'm putting like all the recommendations that I write for students. It's kind of your chance to showcase like how you spent your year. And it's weird, it's January to January, and for our work, I think it really should be September to May. But just keeping a simple Word document with those things makes it so much less daunting. I also fix tests right away. That question that didn't work that we have to give everybody the 2 points for. I don't want to make that same mistake 2 semesters in a row. So I actually just I said future exam 2, and go right ahead. And then of course, when you get the student evaluations, when we read our sets, that's always a good time to go back and, maybe I should offer 3 tests instead of 2, that kind of thing, putting that feedback in. So anyway, I want to talk about, we're giving all this advice, and I think sometimes the Friday before the new semester starts, the intent is not to overwhelm you and be like, oh my God, I didn't do that yet, this is going to be crazy. So now I want to kind of switch gears and talk about self-preservation, and you don't have to do it all. I want to talk about some of the resources on campus that can really help. That I feel a lot of faculty just don't take advantage of, based on that I can just walk right in the door anytime in the Blackboard office and get 100% attention. Setting up a Blackboard quiz for the first time, to me, if that didn't work, and maybe what if I set it up and all the answers were being shown? I have these fears. I just, I go to them, they help me. Giving a Blackboard quiz saves so much more time than paper quizzes and all that stuff. So I think we're already familiar with a lot of these resources, especially the many resources on our campus that support students. The 2 that I want to highlight here, academic multimedia services. I use a lot of guest lectures. I teach Intro to Public Health. There's so many people doing cool things here in DC. And I've started taping my guest lectures, so I have them if it snows or I can't get that speaker to come in next semester, or the hot speaker on climate change, that kind of thing. So it's free. And you get this beautiful, I feel like it's like a cushion. Maybe you're sick, something like that. You have something that you can show the students. And then I also want to talk about the Writing Center. I would say the most important piece of information I've gotten, other than from Laura, maybe from a CTRL session, was you are not an editor. I would spend all my time just helping. I teach a lot of first-year students, helping them rewrite papers. I offered rewrites. And I'm still partial to that, but I really make sure that they know that I would like them to go to the Writing Center and really reward them, because you do see improvements in student writing. And there are also ways where you can just put edits on the first page of a paper. And then I think, Laura, you taught me this. Edits are stopping after page 1, but they can see that, oh, they're having trouble with capitalization and things like that. And they're just going to keep making those same mistakes. And that just takes a lot of time. So these are some of my favorite campus resources. And a little more on self-preservation is your accessibility. I am a big, I'm always checking my email. All my work emails come in with my personal emails, and I'm also a little bit anxious. I'm afraid I'm going to forget to respond, so I'm always writing back to students. But then my students are seeing that oh, I'm still up at 12:10 answering emails. So I have tried, even though I probably am going to answer at 12:10, sometimes I leave those in the outbox and then I send it in the morning. So it just looks like that you're not accessible 24/7, because I care about these guys, and I will kind of lose sleep at night if I think if I get an email that shows that maybe something I did was unclear or something like that. Sometimes I stop checking my email late at night too, just so that I can get a good night's sleep and deal with whatever needs to be put out in the morning. The You Can Book Me office hours accounts are great if you're interested in having a more, knowing who you're going to get in your office hours, and also making it easier for the students. We all do that in my department. Student recommendations, it's okay you will get requests for, really last minute things, and that's really hard if you want to write a good recommendation. I have a colleague who asked for a month's notice. I asked for 2 weeks notice, and I think it's okay to set limits on things like that. And sometimes, getting back to the email, students sort of want you to give the whole kitchen sink in an email. Tony, you're laughing, and all this. It's exhausting. And also, when I write an email, I want to make it rather, in case it comes back to haunt me, I read it a few times, I correct all those mistakes, and before I know it, there's 25 minutes on an email. I think it's okay to say that would be a great thing. Let's come to office hours, or let's walk back to my office and let's talk. That preserves you. It really does. All right, so I want to end with some tips just for staying well, okay, so that you can be a great teacher. So this is the health educator, wellness coach coming out. So I noticed too around this time of, right before the semester starts and right at the end of the semester, I'm sitting so much, I'm hunched over my computer. This is like when my posture isn't as great, my back starts to hurt, things like that. So just keep moving. We can get, in my department, we can get standing desks and exercise balls. They're not very expensive. My son just gave me one at home and he told me it was like $40 for a standing desk. And just make sure that you are taking enough breaks. We get so into it. 2 hours, you've been sitting working on something, but your body needs a little bit of a stretch. A lot of us in our department have walking office hours, and some students like it, some students don't, where we actually, we've got our sneakers in our office and our student comes and we take like a 15-minute walk with the students. And in my department, we really do want to practice what we preach. So we do that. I do power walks for class discussions, and I know that it works for what I teach, but if we're going to be discussing a film, I don't do this every single time, but I will have like the questions on cards and we go out and take a walk. This year I'm teaching at Watkins and I noticed, the track is right there. But I take students all over, the neighborhood, from the Tony fancy AU big houses, which has some good hills over here too. There are some really nice trails just down New Mexico. All right, healthy eating on campus. It's getting better. I don't think it's good. Erica's trying to tell me that it's okay. I'm really picky. But I thought I'd just share for a couple minutes just some of my favorites for healthy eating, and I would love if you can supplement my list. But did you guys know that there is a pizza place on East Campus, and you can get a cauliflower crust pizza for those gluten-free people with tons of veggies, arugula, broccoli, all sorts of cool things, and it's not that expensive. I think a lot of the food on campus is really expensive. The pizza is actually a really good deal. Overnight oats and smoothies now available at Kerwin Hall's little eatery. Mediterranean bowls at what my students call the fake kava, which is the new place in Mary Braden called Palm and Honey. Sometimes you just need to get off campus. Sometimes, exercising off campus. There's the Wilson High School pool is amazing, and there's a huge hot tub. You can just go and sit in the hot tub. I see people do that. And it used to be free for us with our faculty ID, and sometimes depending on who's at the desk, it still is. But the most I think it costs is $5 to go take a swim in their beautiful 50-meter pool. I'm a swimmer, so I'm going to give you the swimming tips. There's some cool yoga studios and fitness places if you don't want to exercise here on campus. But A Healthy U has lunchtime classes just for faculty. They've added cool things like bar and Pilates and spinning and things like that. The Whole Foods salad bar buffet in Tenleytown that gives you a nice walk for like a nicer lunch. Pan Quotidian in Spring Valley. Smoothies at Robux in Tenleytown. Anybody want to add to my list?
Yes.
Yeah.
Subway, you can get a wheat sandwich, and they have calories listed up there. You get one for less than 400 calories, around 47 calories.
Perfect, and that's quick. The lines aren't usually so bad there. That's a great tip. Okay, then the other thing, this is the mom in me, get your flu shot. It's free on campus. Did anybody have the flu over break? A lot of my colleagues had the flu. We want our students to get the flu shot. You can get the flu shot. That will save you a lot of, angst if you get the flu. That is really pretty rotten. Okay, that's all that I want to say. So if you, two things. Oh, I do want to say something. So we're going to have you just take a minute to look at your index cards. We're going to all answer questions, but we did want you to make that list of some things that you might want to try. Is anybody writing some things down? Okay. I do want to say though, in this spirit of flourishing and taking good care of yourself, we hope that you don't have more than 5 things on the list. Or if you do have, a bunch of things, maybe circle 2 or 3 and just feel good about trying some new things. And we hope that these tips that we're giving you work for you as they've worked for us. So I'm just going to end by just, really encouraging you to take good care of yourself so you can really enjoy this job. Forbes has, I think, the job of professor is listed on their top 10 list of best jobs. And it's because of the control that we have over our schedules and over our lives. And so just like this is not your typical 9-to-5 job, it's okay to take a yoga class in the middle of the afternoon or duck out to get a smoothie, that kind of thing. It's really kind of one of the nice things about the flexibility in this job. So thank you.